What's up, guys? Faruqi Bros here, back with another video. And today for you guys, we're going to be talking about the Batman, specifically Matt Reeves' Batman, and some more details about the early script stage when Reeves was being brought on, and Ben Affleck's role, and him eventually leaving the role in 2018 before briefly returning for Zack Snyder Justice League and The Flash. So I'm going to go through the script. Not script. I'm gonna go through Matt Reeves' quotes in a second that he did in a recent interview with, I think, Esquire. And we'll just get right into it. So before I jump right in, let me just open this. All right. Let's go through the quotes. Okay. So let me share my screen. Boom. All right. So the interview with Esquire. Obviously, Matt Reeves is doing all the big press tours for the Batman before the movie hits theaters in a couple of weeks. 1 second. Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay. So I'm going to go through some of the main quotes, and then we can kind of tackle what we think about it and how it fits in the original kind of idea of what we knew what the movie was going to be. So I'm going to get to the first quote. So here's what Matt Reeves said about the initial conversation and reading Ben Affleck, Chris Terrio, Jay Oliva's that original project. I read a script that was a totally valid take on the movie. It was very action-driven. It was very deeply connected to the DCEU with other major characters from other movies and other comics popping up. I just knew that when I read this particular script, it was not the way I'd want to do it. And then later, he said that when they kind of went through the existing script, he said, look, I think maybe I'm not the right person for this. And I explained to them, Warner Brothers, why I love this character being Batman, obviously. I told them that there have been so many great movies, but if I were to do this, I'd have to make it personal so that I understood what I was going to do with it, so that I know where to put the camera, so that I know what to tell the actors, so that I know what the story should be. This take, I told them, pointing at the script, this is now the Ben Affleck script, is a totally valid and exciting take. It is almost James Bondian, but it wasn't something I quite related to. So following, he said, so what I'd love to do, if you're interested, is I'd to get involved and find a way to take the story and make it very, very personal and get to the place where I want him to be, to make it a Batman story and give him an arc and have the story rock him to the core, the filmmaker revealed. It wasn't going to be another origin story, not with Ben Affleck already in the character, but that's what I wanted to do. So this specific paragraph is him talking about his version of the Batman movie with Ben Affleck still in it. Eventually, as we know, Ben Affleck ended up leaving the role just about a month later after Matt Reeves signed on, and now we're here today with just a couple of weeks really before the Batman hits theaters. So Zian, I mean, my first thoughts, just your raw reaction to this interview, this quote. I mean, does it change your perception of the movie? Would you have liked to see that Matt Reeves Ben Affleck combination, or even would you have liked to see Ben Affleck's original script? Because there really are kind of three scripts here, four if you really count maybe Ben Affleck's script being meddled with. But if you take Affleck's script meddled with, Matt Reeves' version of a Batman movie with Ben Affleck, or Matt Reeves on his own with a fresh reboot, do you think we actually got the best of all the four options?
I think from what we're seeing now, we did get the best of four options. But in terms of Matt Reeves using or working with Ben Affleck's version of the script and then having him as the Batman, I think that actually would have been the worst of all the options. I think that if you're going to go with Ben Affleck's script, you would have just had him at the helm and just done everything as kind of like actor-director type project. But I think if Matt Reeves had his own different vision, trying to mix it with Ben Affleck's vision as well, that would just water down both sides and really release a lesser product than it would have been if it just one side or the other. And now, of course, we're getting Matt Reeves' true vision for his product, like just him on his own. And I think it will be the best version of any of the options that we had, just because of how talented he is as a filmmaker and the type of story he's trying to tell with this Batman, who's obviously younger and more early on in his stage as Batman. And with Ben Affleck, obviously be a more at the end of the line, end of the career. As we know, Ben Affleck's Batman is older and very experienced. So I'm sure he would have found cool place to take it within Ben Affleck's idea of the script. But I think from what we have now, we've gotten the best possible option for like a really pure Batman film. As we know, like Ben Affleck, they said that it really tied into what was already in place at the time with what Zack Snyder set up, and maybe some other things within the DCU, like Suicide Squad or whatever, and obviously the Deathstroke rumors and things of that nature. So there's a lot of different aspects in the movie. So I think that though it would have been very cool to see having just a very pure Batman experience that Matt Reeves is trying to tell with this movie, like I said, very personal movie, I think is the best possible option.
It's interesting because the people who've described Ben Affleck's script, like Jay Oliva and others, even Chris Terrio has spoken about it, who was the person who was writing the script, obviously. They've all said, very high praise for Ben Affleck's script, and Ben himself described it as a dark take on the character, but obviously with Deathstroke as the main villain. And Joe Manganiello, who's playing Deathstroke, has multiple times talked about how much he loved his role in that movie and how it was going to be a great action movie between these two kind of like big time DC characters. But again, it's not what we're getting now. We're getting a detective story, we're getting a noir story, we're getting something very different from what Ben Affleck was planning. So Umar, I'm gonna jump this to you because I think you've been probably the biggest Ben Affleck Batman fan from the four of us. I think all four of us did love his take, both in Justice League and Batman v Superman. But how would you like? Do you think that we really missed out on something? Like we really missed out on that Deathstroke versus Batman movie? And would you have preferred it over what Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson are cooking up?
No, I think that now that we've seen what the Batman is probably going to be looking like, I don't think I would prefer the Deathstroke movie over this one. I think what I would have preferred, and I'm greedy like most fans are, I would have preferred having both. I think that would have been kind of the best. I think having, like Jan said, like having doing a Batman movie with Deathstroke where you actually let Ben Affleck direct everything and just do everything on his own. If he wanted to, then I think that would be good, and it would probably help out with the trajectory that they were on before things fell apart. But I do think that as far as like one over the other, no, I think that I like what they're going with when it comes to the Batman. I want to see this detective type story that they're going with. I don't think one needs to be pit against the other. Obviously, if you had Matt Reeves directing Ben Affleck's Batman, I think obviously we'd probably get something pretty good still because they're both amazing at what they do. But I do think that the point that Jan made is good. Like I agree with that. The fact that like if Matt Reeves' heart isn't in that, and Ben Affleck really had a very specific script where it was very much like deeply rooted in the DCEU, then yeah, it makes sense then to like have their project kind of be separate. Do I think that? And I mean, this happens usually with any character that this iconic where they get pit, different interpretations get pit against each other. And I think it's a mistake from the standpoint of like you actually technically lose out on enjoying both like to their fullest. So I think that's like it would have been cool to see what they had planned with Deathstroke and like the Batman and the DCEU, but I think it's better to like look towards the future. I actually don't know why like the interviews that are being done. I mean, people ask, and that's why they give the answers that they give. But I think there needs to be more of a focus on the project that's coming out rather than what could have been, because they struggle with that. They've been struggling with that.
I think that's your question. I mean, you know how the clickbait market works, and when this story came out, this is the pull quote that everyone was talking about. This is the quote that on the internet everyone was fighting over each other for. So it became the big thing because Ben Affleck is still a hot name, and then take all the controversy with Zack Snyder Justice League and the sequels and restore the Snyderverse. So any kind of opportunity we could think about, oh, wait a minute, we could have had this. It would have been a big deal, which leads to my point before I give it to Samir, my point of it. The irony is Ben Affleck's Batman movie has been in development on and off since 2016, since BVS came out. And in 2018, which was the original release date, if you think about it, if we got a Batman movie in 2018 with Ben Affleck, and the Batman is coming out 2022, that actually would have been the right amount of time if they wanted to reboot anyways. So like we could have gotten a Ben Affleck movie in 2018 and still gotten the Batman if things played out differently. Of course, like a bit of
2020. I think the Batman was officially supposed to come out last year, right? 2021.
Yeah, the Batman
because of COVID
last year. Yeah, pushed down a few months. Yeah. But then it comes down to also like we know, like there's the other side of the story, which is Ben Affleck's own words, right? And he said several times of how Justice League, particularly the reshoots, were the worst experience of his entire career, and pretty much put him off Batman. And remember, he was really finalizing his script during that time, so I think it really made a difference in like him just not being interested in putting a production together, especially when he saw that the person who convinced him to join in the first place, Zack Snyder, was pretty much removed from the situation. So I think I don't blame him for, between his real life and the other trials and tribulations he was going through with various substances, stuff like that. It's for the best that he took time for himself and his family, which made him leave. And eventually now he's coming back and he's getting his big swan song in The Flash, which, depending where you stand on the table, you might think is a bad idea or a good idea. Just until the movie comes out, we won't truly know like if they did him justice as goodbye. But this is really supposed to be his goodbye, and I think anything short of some miracle Justice League 2 announcement, I don't think Ben Affleck's coming back for anything. So it's kind of the end of the road there, which is why when I go back to this interview and Matt Reeves bringing it up, I'm like, okay, this kind of fills in the gaps that are left out of like what was happening when Matt Reeves left for a second and he came back, and we know he demanded total creative freedom, which he'd got probably from seeing what's happening to his friends and other people in the industry with Justice League. So he saw kind of all the horror stories. He's like, if I'm doing this movie, you better give me complete creative control, which they did. I think at the cost of, the trade-off was they removed a little bit of a budget. So now the Batman is actually the cheapest Batman movie ever made, cheapest solo movie, 100 million, versus like even the cheapest Batman movie before that was 120 at least. So all that being considered, this interview doesn't bother me. A lot of people are angry at Matt Reeves, saying that, oh, this is proof that he kicked Ben Affleck out, but I didn't really like that. In fact, one of the quotes that I pulled out specifically said that, oh, well, here's how I would do it with Ben Affleck in the role. Of course, it wouldn't be an origin story because it's Ben Affleck playing the character. So I can imagine a very similar story with Catwoman and Riddler and all these characters, Penguin showing up and it just being Ben Affleck in that role. It would have been a little different because Ben Affleck's a much older Batman versus right now doing a younger Batman story. But could have been interesting. But I think I do agree with you guys that it's the best of these scenarios. So, I mean, Samir, do you agree with all of our takes here? Do you have a different take between getting that Ben Affleck script versus what we're getting now with the Matt Reeves script?
No, I completely agree with Jan. I think Matt Reeves said it was a completely valid script for the DCEU as a whole. So changing it to meet Matt Reeves' vision, I think that would negatively affect what Matt Reeves' potential had for his own Batman movie and what Ben Affleck had for his script for the DCEU as a whole. So I think this was definitely the best outcome. But I do wonder, would making Ben Affleck the Batman movie affect what they're doing with the Flash now and bringing in Michael Keaton, or if Ben Affleck would still want to play that role afterwards.
Yeah, that's a good point. There was a rumor, and I just, depending how much you want to put stock in, I think I put very little in it, but you never know. There was a rumor that after Zack Snyder's Justice League came out, HBO offered Ben Affleck to do his Batman script as a series, and he said no. I don't know how much stock, but like they didn't want Justice League 2. They were like adamant that we're not doing any more Snyderverse, but they did offer Ben Affleck, hey, are you interested in doing something with your character, HBO Max? But according to the rumor, again, lots of grains of salt, he said no at the time. Samir, I got a quick question for you now because I have one tiny topic that I want to just squeeze in. So Joker 2 is starting with Batman related. Joker 2 is starting to shoot in 2023. And one of the rumors, pretty out there, but it's actually attached to this because WB has received the first script. So things are leaking out of said script. And there is a very big role for a female co-star, which a lot of people are assuming is Harley Quinn because the end of the first movie, Joker is in Arkham Asylum. So if there is a female Dr. Harley Quinzel that he meets, or they use a different name if they don't want to use the same names as the comic book characters, and she becomes kind of like in love with him, and then she becomes Harley Quinn. They do that whole storyline between the two. Apparently, one rumor is that Joaquin Phoenix wants his wife, I think it's his wife, right? Yeah, his wife, Rooney Mara, to co-star as that character, but Warner Brothers wants Lady Gaga to perform as that character. So obviously she's just coming off a House of Gucci, right? So Samir, for you specifically, because you talked to Rooney Mara at the Joker Gala that we were at, who would you rather prefer in this co-star role?
I mean, I'd have to go with Rooney Mara. I didn't get the picture though, so it's really just my word against everyone. I mean, you didn't get the picture from the back either. I explained to you.
I have a blurry picture. I have like a
I don't
blurry
know what you were
picture.
trying to do. I'm not even in it. It's just them. It's like you can't even tell it's them. It's just their back.
But is that enough? Like, if I can show that I'm behind them, then you're next to them, it's like good enough. Like, and you can describe the smell and everything. You said you describe what they smell like. Do you remember what you said?
It smells like an ashtray. That's all I know.
So you prefer Rooney Mara over Lady Gaga for this? Oh, it's not necessarily Harley Quinn; it's just a female co-star lead. What about you, Umar? Do you have a preference of these two actresses? Yes.
I don't.
Do you even want Harley Quinn to show up? I think I the only reason I don't agree with it might not be Harley is because they already have an established Harley Quinn in this universe, and kind of going back and forth doesn't make a lot of sense. But Zion, you can just end it off, and we'll call it a day there.
Yeah, I guess just as a serious answer, I think Rooney Mara would be the better, just because you obviously have the natural chemistry between Joaquin and her, and she's obviously done very good in roles where she was like a more psychologically troubled or deeper character, or like something like Ghost Story, for example, where she was. She can play that role very well. Lady Gaga, she seems more like a eccentric character. She can play those characters well, but I think
isn't Harley Quinn that though?
True, but I don't think we know how Joker regularly is, and the Joker that they had in Joaquin's movie was very different than what a regular Joker is, where he's much more psychologically deep down in troubles and whatever. Mentally, I think that they can have a little more subtle version of like a Harley Quinn character, and then if it's any player, I think if Joaquin's suggesting her, even more so, if you want to get him on board, listen to his requests, and she would probably do a great job.
Yep. Either way, in my final thought on that is that I'm actually surprised even that for a while we haven't heard anything about that script, so I'm very surprised they actually have got a script now delivered to Warner Brothers. They've reviewed it, and now they've set the start of shooting for 2023, which means we might get the Joker sequel 2024 if it's like a quick shoot. Obviously, these movies have no CGI. It's a very quick kind of quicker process than like a big blockbuster. But what do you guys think about Matt Reeves' comments for the Batman and Ben Affleck's original role? Would you have preferred one of these combinations of scripts and directors over the other? Let us know in the comments below and join the debate. From myself, from Zion, from Umar, and from Samir, we're the Faruqi Bros, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.